Hey, football family, or hello, football family, and welcome to this mashup of Huddle It Up Films and One Winning Pod, talking about our Red Star players coming up in this draft. Jason, thanks so much for having us on your channel to do this show. We're super excited about it.
Our first collaboration with One Winning Pod here on Huddle It Up Films. I see Jeremiah W. already in the chat. Hello, my favorite channel. Thank you for joining us. And not much advertising on the YouTube end, so hopefully people find us and filter in. But we'll also be live streaming here or collaborating, be on the One Winning Pod. So, Alec, thank you. Peter, Chris, thank you guys for joining me. Kirk Caldwell in the building already as well. Hey, Kirk, what's going on? Always love interacting with Kirk on YouTube or Twitter, by the way. Follow all these guys. Alec, take it away, buddy.
Awesome. Well, we kind of wanted to do this as the last part of our drafts content, and in a way, like the beginning of Jason's. You know, he put out a few videos about different prospects, but we're going to start kind of getting into the players we really like in this draft. This is mostly going to be about players we like at their value, like where people think they might get drafted and how they might be a really good fit for the Ravens and what they're looking for. And then we also have, of course, we won't really talk about players that were lower on than consensus and don't want to draft in this episode. That'll maybe be conversations for future videos from Jason. We kind of discussed that already in our previous shows if you want to go back and listen to our offense and defensive recaps. So yeah, I guess we'll get right to the meat of the draft. We won't keep you waiting. We'll jump right into wide receiver and then kind of go through our needs from there. So Jason, who you got? Who you liking at wide receiver?
I like a guy from Houston. I actually like a guy that I'm taller than. I like a guy that weighs about as much as I do, and that is Nathaniel Tank Dell. Now, I saw some of your other picks on this, and Tank Dell wasn't taken, so I had to take Tank Dell, and I'm going to bat for this man. The most amazing feat in this draft, the best feat, I'd say, comparable to Garrett Wilson from last year. I'm looking on my board, and I have him as a second rounder. I have him sitting there at number 57 with the stars. As a matter of fact, I'll copy and paste my board. Go to my YouTube channel. You can find my board as well. But what I like about Tank Dell, even at his size, he's got 30 touchdowns. One of them is a kick return touchdown, by the way, or punt return touchdown. So this guy's fearless. And with his red zone touchdowns, that amount of touchdowns for a receiver that size, it just goes to show you how quickly he can get open and be a friendly target for his quarterback. You also have the fact that if you blitz him, if it's 3rd and goal from the 6 and you blitz, Tank Dell is going to be open, first one open, easy 6 points for him. Yak, new offensive coordinator, talked a lot about finding space, creating space. This is a guy you want to get the ball in his hands with space. So I don't see Tank Dell as a deep threat. The reason he is my starred player on this board is I've seen a lot of the mocks out there, and I know you guys have too. And he's going 4th round, 5th round. I'll just wait and get Tank Dell in the 4th or 5th round. And I don't think that that's the case. I think when you have an alpha skill like he has, which is his feet, the lightning quickness, the lateral quickness, the yards after the catch, the red zone threat that he is, I see him going end of the 2nd, beginning of the 3rd. So how about you, Chris? Do you have a receiver that you like?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think Tank Dell's really interesting. I mean, I think he's one of those players that the Ravens wouldn't traditionally draft in a Greg Roman offense. We just really haven't many players like that. But, with the new offensive coordinator coming in, I think that could be an exciting piece if you want to build around, something new we haven't seen before. So, he's definitely been interesting. I've seen a little bit of film on him. I know one guy we talked about in our offensive draft picks episode. I didn't even look at wide receiver, but I just kind of noticed him after looking at some quarterback tape, was Cedric Tillman. I know he's Alex guy as well. Bigger body, definitely in that mold of receiver. I think a lot of Ravens fans for a long time were like, you got to have that big body receiver who can go up and make the catch. Like I said, I was looking at a lot of Hendon Hooker film to just kind of evaluate the quarterback class. And, the receivers, I think, at Tennessee just kind of stood off the page. And Tillman, I think in particular, just a guy that, was like, wow, making tons of plays, just stacking up guys and winning at the point of attack. So I would love him. I know, he's probably not in the, solid first round pick range, but I feel like he's been getting a little bit more love recently. He might be in that, late first, early second kind of thing. I'm not sure if the Ravens are going to be able to target him depending on like where that range is, but man, if he were available and the Ravens really wanted to get him, like I think he'd be a good fit for the room.
Awesome.
Peter, go ahead, Alec.
Yeah, I was going to say, Peter, who you got?
Man, there's a couple guys I could talk about, but we see Jeremiah W in the chat right now talking about Hyatt, asking what we think about him. And, I've gone back and forth on him, but I think where I am right now is leaning a little bit towards my first impression of him, which is like that I think if he's used properly in the NFL, this guy could be like Mike Wallace-esque. That's the first player that I thought of when I looked at his tape. And I get what everyone's saying about the scheme. You can see it. I understand that they did some things in Tennessee to kind of give him, a little bit of an easier look at some time, give him some space off the line. But, I mean, you can't argue with the production that he had in the SEC last year. And just also some of the games he had, particularly against Alabama, against that strong competition. He made plays. Now, yes, he is a little slight, 6 foot, 175. I don't remember how big Mike Wallace was. What I saw him listed was about 200. Now, I can't remember if that was later in his career or when he first came out. But, I think that play is there. And, we got Todd Monken here. And look at what he was able to do in Tampa with the deep threats there. Unlocked Perryman. I'm pretty sure he was the first to really get Perryman any production in his career. Deshaun Jackson had some strong stints there. I think that complementing a healthy Bateman and Odell, Hyatt could be a guy who could really stretch this offense if used properly. I do hear some of the arguments against him, and yeah, his frame does scare me a little bit as far as like durability and will he really be able to, be physical and separate, get space for himself if he's pressed by a corner. But there's some tantalizing speed there and big playability, and I wouldn't mind seeing the Ravens take a pass on him if he's there at the right value.
Yeah, definitely. And like we said earlier, Cedric Tillman's definitely one of the guys I identified early that I really liked. I really liked his just body control. I'm pretty confident in his ability to translate his skills to the next level. And the other guy I was kind of interested in is Mingo. Mingo is just like, it's so funny. He has AJ Brown's number, school, and just like kind of like almost feels like a light version of him. I could definitely see him being a really productive player in the NFL. There's some people thinking that he'll go like in the 4th round, and I'm just like, sign me up. If we can get Cedric Tillman and Mingo 3rd and 4th round, I would do that so fast. Get a corner in the 1st round. I feel like we'd be winning the draft and doing flips. That life's good here in Baltimore. But I will say there is an interesting contrarian take. I haven't read the full article yet, but I got an email today from JJ Zacharyson from lateround.com being like, should you buy the Mingo and Tillman hype? And I felt like personally attacked because I'm like, I feel like these are the 2 guys I've been being the drum. Like the TLDR is apparently Tillman has the better like analytic profile, but he does have a red flag. And then there's also Mingo's production profile and kind of projecting their careers. So maybe you want to go check that out as like a contrarian take, or I like I said, I haven't read it fully yet, so maybe it's not totally contrarian. There's still like obviously a path where these guys could be great, but yeah, I really like those guys a lot, and I'm definitely going to follow their careers no matter where they go. Yeah,
love Jonathan Mingo. Also want to say what's up, my good friend, co-worker. I consider him almost Simply AS10, best highlights in the business. Check out Simply AS10 on YouTube. Again, he's just the best at what he does, and I hope he gets a career in it. Selfishly, I hope that's what he wants to do because I'd love to see his work for a team like the Ravens. But when it comes to Mingo, I feel like a piece like that had to be written, Alex, because Mingo's just been climbing and climbing and climbing. And, he was starred on my board, but I'm almost ready to take the star off of him as one of my favorites because I had him this high early, and it seems like everybody's coming up to it now. I mean, when he ran a 4.4 something at the combine, I think that really opened people's eyes. They saw his size. They saw his build, the long arms. Like when he lines up, you look at him, you don't have to look hard to find him. You're like, where's Jonathan Mingo? There he is. Yup, that's him. And he's wearing the same uniform as everybody else. He just looks different in it. And, but yeah, he made some unbelievable catches. You'll probably see Simply's highlights of him once he's drafted, catching the ball on other people's backs. Excellent ball tracker. excellent length and shoulder flexibility for him to be able to grab it, box people out. And I'm going to kick it to Chris on this. A lot of people label Mingo a big slot. Okay, well, that's all he can do. But I kind of like his releases off the line of scrimmage. I wouldn't say they're like really fast or great releases or extra creative, but he's just so strong. So he doesn't have to release as quick or as get some separation on the line as much as some other guys to be able to get where he wants to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say I haven't watched a ton of his films, so I won't be the expert here. But I mean, I'll say, like, if he's got the physical traits, I mean, I think at the NFL level, teams are going to move you around where you have the mismatches, right? So that's the one thing, I guess, to keep in mind as well when you're scouting a lot of these players out of college, is that whatever they did in college doesn't mean that's what they're going to do at the NFL level, right? I think a lot of it is like their tape might look really good, but if they don't have the physical traits, they're not going to translate to the highly physical NFL, right? But sometimes, like, you do look at the physical traits and you're like, okay, well, those I can build off of, but you kind of have to build up all that through coaching, right? So, I mean, I wouldn't worry about that too much, just in terms of like, where is this guy going to be drafted? I think if he's got that, the physical traits, I think it's going to be fine.
Yeah, definitely. And I agree, Jeremiah. There's no way he falls to the fourth. I'm starting to wonder if he even falls to the third, So
Yeah.
We'll definitely have to. I think those mocks are still living in a couple months ago land, before people got hip. So
feeling
talk
a little
about Gann.
bit like Pickens and Pierce last year. If those guys started out as third round grades and then they made the rise and eventually were second round, as we know.
Yeah, like Jeremiah said, if it wasn't for the ankle, maybe if the extras are good, he'll be valuable. Like George Pickens, I totally can see that. It's like almost like the redemption tour. We were banging the drum last year this time for Pickens, and now we're here banging the drum for Tillman.
Yeah, very similar, because I think Pickens got penalized because he came back and maybe didn't look like himself. Maybe it was off the field stuff. I don't know. But for me, Cedric Tillman gutting through an ankle injury and still putting up the numbers he did, to me, that only raises his draft stock, because you guys know you're never 100% healthy in the NFL. You're going to need guys that can still produce when they're banged up. So one of the things that endears me to Cedric Tillman out of Tennessee is his toughness, his ability to produce even when he's not 100%.
For sure. Well, let's talk about guys getting hyped up the boards in the cornerback room. Jason was the first one to say his name to me, and now I keep hearing the name everywhere. It's like an echo chamber. Dude, are you starting a trend?
It depends on who. Last year, my Trent McDuffie trend didn't last till, of course, the Chiefs had to get him, and they had to win a Super Bowl with him. But nobody jumped on that train. So who are you thinking? Is it Joey Porter Jr.?
No, I was thinking about Mr. Forbes.
Oh, very true. Very true. I know y'all see everybody warming up to my guy, Emmanuel Forbes. There's just so much. I feel like I have him. I scooted him up. He's number 14 on my board right now.
Holy
and I almost still feel like that's too low. Like, you don't usually see college prospects with those kind of eyes and then a 4.3 speed to match. So he's not just fast. He's got the instincts. To be an outside corner, you can play him in zone. He's got those long arms. You can check him in man. And then everybody says, well, he's 6 foot, 160 some pounds. That's a disqualifier. That's not a first round pick. That is too thin. And then you watch him tackle Alec, and he's got some real emotion and some real want to in his tackling. He knows his body limits. But there's no substitute for eyes, pick sixes, NCAA record, of course, 6 interceptions returned for a touchdown one season or over his career. But that's just amazing. I think he had 3 of them last year. Just a tremendous prospect in Emmanuel Forbes. SEC school, by the way, Mississippi State. So he's not doing this somewhere unknown. The quarterbacks he's facing are going to get drafted too. Love Emmanuel Forbes.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns last year as a senior. Also had 3 touchdowns his freshman year. 183 return yards his freshman year, 174 his senior. I mean, yeah, that's something you look at what this defense needs. Of course, we have Marcus Williams. Unfortunately, wasn't able to play the full season last year, but we don't know whether or not we're going to have Marcus Peters at this time, next year. And even if we do, he's getting up there in age. We can't just rely on Fruit Punch and Williams to get all the turnovers. It's not a bad idea at all to take a a chance on a guy like this. And yeah, I mean, I understand where people are coming from with the concerns about the frame, but I mean, I'm going to say the same thing that I said about, Linderbaum last year when we drafted him. For me personally, I don't really care as much what someone's physical traits are. I care more about how do you know how to use what your body is? Do you know how to use whatever it is that you are athletically? And like you said, he's a guy who does know that. I'm glad you brought up the tackling. I think that he needs to be an aggressive tackler at that size, and he is. So, there's a lot there that is really intriguing with him. I don't know if I have him ranked up as high as you do, but certainly if the Ravens were able to get him at 22 and drafted him, I'd be pretty pleased with that pick.
Now, all right, Peter, you'd be pleased with that pick, but let's say you had Joey Porter Jr., your other favorite, and Forbes on the board. Which one are you going with?
I think I would go slightly more towards Porter. I know that there's a lot of people in the flock who are high on Porter, and I'll admit I wasn't super high on him until I got swayed by some people pointing stuff out of his game on Twitter. A lot of people talking about him in the flock, and he apparently, I was told by the guys during our defensive podcast that his dad is actually probably my least favorite football player of all time, Joey Porter from the Steelers. Just never liked that guy. I really am not a fan who has hate for the Steelers, but just something about Porter, just, man, the guy, just, I don't know what it was. Just something rubbed me the wrong way with him. But his son on tape, I mean, he's physical. He's physical in coverage. He hits hard. There's plenty of that you see him on tape where, he's seeing the lane, whether it's a running back coming out of the backfield or a guy over the middle, and he's coming in like a heat-seeking missile and making a big play. There's just so much to like with this guy. I like his footwork, how he mirrors the receiver. I don't have much bad to say about him. It's just a lot there that looks like it has a lot of potential. And I feel like the hard-hitting physical play is exactly what we look for in cornerbacks with the Ravens. So slight edge to me with Porter, but Forbes also a great prospect. You got a lot of good cornerbacks high in this draft.
It's really nuts. I was going to say, Chris, I know you got a guy too that you're looking at for corner.
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say, I think I have a feeling like where the board's going to go. Porter, man, I don't know if he's going to be falling to 22. Ravens would have to be trading up to be able to get him. I think the run of corner is going to go pretty quickly. I was going to say, I mean, one guy who I can't tell if I'd be happy with him at 22, but I'd probably be happy with him somewhere at the end of the first, maybe even the second, depending on like a trade back scenario. But Kylie Ringo out of Georgia is a guy I've been kind of leaning toward. I just think he would be a great boundary corner fit. And, given Marcus Peters, we don't know what his status is in terms of, whether he's going to be re-signed or not. I just feel like that's kind of the missing piece here. The thing that I guess that I don't like about Forbes is, I guess, given his body type, I'm a little leery about him playing on the outside. And if I look at his ball skills, I'm like, obviously this guy isn't the same in terms of ball skills, but one guy who, I am a little bit excited about, and I'd like to see him get more playing time. And he's also a little bit of a ball hawk, is Pepe Williams. And even though, so I think he's like 5'10", 185. So, I mean, he's got like 15 pounds on Forbes and everything. But, I feel like if he can make a step up this year, like he's pretty good in the slot. He's got some ball skills. I think that kind of locks that down. But putting Forbes on the outside against like, some of the Bengals receivers or something, like kind of scares me a little bit. Whereas like Ringo, like a little bit bigger, more physical, can play the boundary pretty well. If he can lock his guy down, then, it kind of gives some of the other ball, guys with ball skills to be able to make a play. But yeah, like I said, I don't know if it's a guy I would take at 22 and feel great about it, just because there are probably some other really good first round prospects at that position.
Yeah, and you know what? I just wanted to add here. I mean, we've talked about we haven't even talked about Devin Witherspoon. We haven't talked about Deontay Banks. We haven't talked about Christian Gonzalez. So when you're looking at pick 22, and this is one of the reasons I say that cornerback is going to be staring us in the face one way or the other at pick 22. There's going to be a guy, whether it's my guy, Chris's guy, Peter's guy, Alex's guy, that we think is a perfect complement to Marlon Humphrey. A cornerback 1, 2, however you want to phase them, but somebody capable of playing that left side, being a little bit of a ball hawk, bringing a physical presence on the strong side, and being there. So I think if I had to say that corner would be the most likely pick for me at 22, just because of the dearth of talent. It's either that, edge is the other group I think that's really strong at the top. I have a feeling personally that the receivers that we want could probably be gobbled up quick like they were last year. So, cornerback is just a really strong group. And, I mean, think about it. We got Humphrey at what, like pick 17 or something? Peter might know, somewhere around there. So
16,
pick 22. And that was we passed on Tre'Davious White to pick Marlon Humphrey at 17. So I could see a very similar scenario this year where at 22, a number one corner, future Pro Bowler is sitting there.
For sure. Yeah, I love a lot of these prospects as well. And like you said, when you got guys like Gonzalez and Witherspoon, who you're pretty confident are going to go in the top, that just pushes these guys down further where there's a chance, no matter on how the rest of the board falls, how everyone else's ranking needs, how the quarterback run goes, how, will wide receiver go early that we don't expect or do expect, so to speak, but like how many wide receivers go. There's a bunch of different ways that these players can get pushed down. I mean, there's tackles in this draft that could likely go ahead of us at 22. Things that we're not looking for. Maybe even like a Bijan Robinson gets drafted, and that pushes somebody back. So I agree with you. I can't imagine 6 corners going off the board before 22, and that means somebody we like is going to be there. So I'm looking at our document here, and I had next up interior offensive line. So Jason, this is a part of, I'm really looking forward to hear what you have to say. Who do you got in the interior? Who do you have as maybe potential guard to come in to challenge Cleveland, challenge, whoever the heck we end up having play guard this year on the left-hand side?
So I think the guards are properly ranked where I have them on my board, talking about maybe one sneaks into the first, beginning of the second. You'll see Osiris Torres. You'll see Steve Avila come off the board. Cody Mock will become sometime probably in the second round. But the guy that I'm high on is actually a college tackle, and he's from right here in the state of Maryland, Jalen Duncan. I have it number 56 on my board. So 56 on my board is not counting the quarterbacks. And, of course, the first 56 picks aren't going to be the 56 I have listed for sure. So I'm hoping Jalen Duncan could be somebody that gives you some tactical flexibility that might be there in the third round. Very good feet. Obviously, he's a left tackle. His pass protection is no problem at all. It'll be easy for him at the left guard. I think he has the quickness to be able to get off the line of scrimmage at left guard. He's got the mobility to be able to pull. He's got everything you want in a left guard as far as protecting your quarterback's blind side, the eyes. He's used to working with twists and stunts. And I think it'll be a pretty easy transition. Is he the best run blocker? Is he a mauler? No, Jalen Duncan is not. But what he'll do is he'll be able to move. He'll be able to play in any kind of, you want to run wide zone, he can do that. You want to run power and have him climb, he can do that. Obviously, he's over 300 pounds, big enough to do that. And I really like him he can bail you out of the game at left tackle if you needed him to as well, be your starting left guard. So Jalen Duncan out of Maryland, number 56 on my board. I'd say a sleeper pick. People would say, why would we take a tackle? Maybe we're taking him to compete with Ben Cleveland, give him a half a year to get some muscle, get some used to the position, and have him take over. And also wanted to say what's up to my guy, Raven C, in the building while I have the microphone. Love you, Raven C. Always support you. Thank you for coming through and swinging by, man. It's great to see you.
It's funny to me that you mentioned that drafting a tackle while we doing that, maybe move him into guard, because lost in the 25 million questions about Lamar Jackson during that one thing with Harbaugh, he mentioned Falele competing at guard. And I was like, what a mountain of a man on the inside. Peter, I see that you have a couple prospects here as well.
Yeah, and the first guy I'll talk about would be the Ravens going a little bit of a different route than what Jason suggested. And we'll start off with, I think it is unlikely that the Ravens would use their first round pick on Osiris Torrance. But here's one thing, path I could see them going. We know that Zeitler is towards the end of his career. This could be his last year in Baltimore. When you look at that offensive line, Linderbaum had a strong rookie year, but do we feel strong enough with that line with Stanley, who's obviously already set as an All-Pro, and Linderbaum as basically your two, plus guys on that line, your two borderline Pro Bowl talents. We've had Yanda there, and Zeitler's been a Pro Bowl guy, so I could see them going the route if, like, in a world where somehow all the cornerbacks are gone. Highly unlikely, but you could see them going for Torrance. And I mean, this guy is a physical freak, 6'5", 347. Was right guard for Florida, helping in that offensive line, keeping Anthony Richardson safe. And this guy, you watch his tape, and guys aren't moving him at the college level. I think he's got really good footwork, good power. Now, sometimes you do see him get beat a little bit by more athletic pass rushers, and it doesn't, make up for that as best as he could all the time. But I think that's something that's coachable. He's a guy who's just a freak athlete and a technician, and someone I think is going to be a stud player at the next NFL level. Little bit of shades of Kelechi Osemele maybe in his game, but yeah, again, not something a route the Ravens I think are likely to take, but it is something that I think is a possibility given Zeitler's age and how we know that the Ravens really like to have multiple studs on the offensive line.
So if they take a guard over a receiver or corner, man, Chris, yeah, I wouldn't like it. I just don't like it. I think we can get a good starting guard with a future in the third round. But yeah, Torrance, though, to your point, Peter, just a dominant mauler type. And he's just like, his body's so big, he's hard to get around. I mean, he has a little problem with quickness, but he's long, wide. Like, I think that he'd be fine once he adjusted the speed to the NFL to be able to be your stud guard, which is your right guard going up against the three techs all the time. There's dominant defensive linemen. He's definitely got a future in this league. But yeah, Alec, if we pick a right guard over a receiver or corner in the first round, I think that would go pretty terrible.
Yeah, I think that would fall real flat in the flock, and honestly, I think even for the team.
I think there's some wide receivers you wouldn't mind just taking him over, though.
Yeah, I mean, there's some, yeah, but like in a rational,
and again, like I said, it's not something I'm pulling for. I'm just saying I could see, there's a low maybe like a 2% chance that could happen. I'm just saying I think.
So I think the way it happens, Peter, you kind of mentioned it. What if we trade back? Let's say we trade back aggressively, and we're like we got like 40 and 45, which I know aren't actual picks. I think, but like, for context, we're like trading way back, and then the corners could be gone. They very well could be gone, and then the wide receivers you like are gone. And Raven CD, me too. I'm gonna pull my hair out, but
hey, Alec, I can see it. Look, we trade back. We got 2 second-round picks. We get our guard of the future, and we get Tank Dell or Jonathan Mingo, or some of our other favorites. I mean, that wouldn't be too bad.
Not crazy.
If we come away with our first pick in 85 as a guard, though.
None of us last year were talking about Hollywood getting traded and us getting Linderbaum. Weird things happen on draft night.
For sure. And, we didn't really get into it on this show, but there are a couple guys I even like in the later rounds at corner. So there is a good draft. There are players, we got guys like Darius Rush. I'll have to bring him up again, who's a big prospect. You got Julius Brents, Tyreek Stevenson. These are some guys I would love to see the Ravens draft later on too. So there are some players in later rounds for corner where we could address that need as well. But I went spelunking, guys. I went looking between the last 2 shows for a guard prospect I could bring up. And I haven't heard this guy brought up anywhere. And I have to admit, I found him completely based off arm length. But McClendon Curtis out of Chattanooga, I went and watched this film, and his eyes are not the best, but his frame is the best. And I'm thinking to myself, you get him with our offensive line coach, you don't put any expectations on him to start year 1, but he could be a developmental guy that could be interesting. So I just was watching him. I was like, he definitely has the traits, but I'm not sure if he has the processing, the eyes. You see him do a lot of pulls. He's not always fully successful. So I'm just like a little concerned, and I'm not at all like, putting my stamp of total approval, but he caught my attention.
So Chris, what do you think about Alec trying to be the big brain on campus? A guy from a Division II school as a late round draft buyer. I'm actually pretty impressed with Alec for finding McClendon Curtis, who doesn't even register on the Pro Football Reference, College Football Reference, because he doesn't have a Division I status. But yeah, he's like this huge guy with like long arms, and he just looks like a beast.
Yeah. I mean, I got to be honest. You know what? I saw a little bit of film from him too, from doing interior offensive line on our show. I didn't have a ton of notes on him, but I did note the hardest thing for me, I think, when looking at offensive linemen is just finding the right like body types, because it's like that is probably one of the closest physical traits that I know of like where does that project, right? You can be really tall, you're not gonna, and you can play in the interior like a guy like I just had his name, like Joe Tippmann's like 6'6" and he weighs like 317. He plays center. He also has 32-inch arms. That's just not a great combination of like, there are just some physical combinations that are just not going to be great fits for certain positions. And I tell you what, man, I looked at a ton of interior linemen, and there were guys like, played well on tape and stuff. But when I'm looking at where they're going to project in the NFL, it was just really hard. Like either the guys was like too small, didn't weigh enough, like wasn't tall enough, the arms weren't right. And the guy with Mr. McClendon over here, like, yeah, the dude is built like a professional, like right guard, like he's a beast. Just seeing some of the like power that he has, like push guys over when he does land, is amazing. Like, you'd want to see that. So I don't mind it. There are a couple guys on here. One guy I really liked was Ricky Stromberg out of Arkansas. Honestly, if we didn't have our center from last year, then I'd say maybe we take a shot, because he seems like a decent center, or at least somebody kind of developed there. But I just don't see his body type as being like the guard center combination. Maybe the Ravens might see it, but if we want a guy that like we're talking about, we want to replace Zeitler for the coming years, I wouldn't mind taking a flyer on McClendon. I think it's a good pick, Alec.
So Alec, my buddy Mark brought up Jarrett Patterson. I believe his first name's Jarrett, out of Notre Dame. Wanted to ask if any of you guys know anything about Patterson. Mark, he's somebody that I have to take another look at, because I gotta be honest with you, I watched the Senior Bowl. I wasn't real impressed. I kind of like darked him out early because I already had like 25 interior offensive linemen I was looking at. But he's a guy, Mark, quite honestly, he might be on my board, and he might be in the draftable range by the time I'm finished, because, man, everybody else seems to like him. And whenever everybody else seems to like him, it doesn't mean I'm going to just be a sheep and just go along with everybody. But Peter, it means to me, it feels like I should take another look at him.
Yeah, and I'm in that same boat with you as well. He's someone I need to take a better look at as well. But like you're saying, there's a lot of good minds in the flock. A lot of people who are watching stuff on YouTube. A lot of people who know stuff. So, yeah, if a lot of guys are bringing him up, definitely someone I think we should take a deeper look at.
Well, I guess the next position group is inside linebackers. And I know that we had a nice conversation about it on our show last week, but I'm really excited to hear what Jason has to say about this group.
Yeah, my Red Star guy was pretty easy on this one. His name is Deion Henley. He plays Washington State, so Pac-12 guy. I would just say I love him. I mean, people will knock him for his age. I think he's like 24 years old, so he's an older rookie, still feeling the effects of COVID and shutting down seasons and half seasons and guys wanting to prove themselves. But, there's really nothing that I see on tape that he doesn't do well. You're talking about, like, his calling card is his coverage. So, number one, if you're a guy to coach, like I'm thinking John Harbaugh, he showed his willingness to play Patrick Queen 100% of the snaps last year next to Roquan. He likes having two inside linebackers on the field. Not always a dime guy. He was when we had Chuck Clark. Will he be now? I don't know. but Deion Henley's calling card is being able to cover. He reminds me almost of Bowser, but just imagine an inside linebacker who can match up on tight ends, break up passes, intercept passes. Love Deion Henley. And then from the run defense, when the action comes towards him, he's very long armed. He's got the skills. And he doesn't just have long arms, he uses them. Stack, shed, physicality. You can see him scrape down the line and make plays. Just a high IQ player. He's got the physical build. He's got the mindset. I think people are seriously sleeping on this guy. So Deion Henley, yes, he is my Red Star player by far at inside linebacker. And just going through now, I have him at the top of the draftable list. I would put him higher, but I don't think that I need to. He's number 90 on my board, and that's considering that as of now, the Ravens already have 2 inside linebackers. Would that change on draft day and change my board? If Patrick Queen's traded, of course. But to have an inside linebacker who's not highly touted by others, number 90 on my board, says something, Alec, about how much I just love Deion Henley's game. If you're not familiar with him, watch a little highlights, watch a game of him, and you can see just the timing he has in all phases. The run game, he knows when to shoot his gap. He knows how to blitz. He knows when to take on a block and shed. He knows when he doesn't have time to shed, he'll just blow up that block with his shoulder. And, of course, outstanding in coverage. Maybe he's topped out. Maybe, 24, 25, this is as good as he gets. To me, it's NFL starting will.
For sure. I like that guy too. We talked about him on last week's show. I'll bring up another guy that I'm kind of keen on as well, is Overshone out of Texas. He's got that rangy high motor skills. And also he was a special team standout. So we know the Ravens like that. He used to be a safety, so he's better in coverage. And that's always a trait that I'm keen on. I'm always talking about getting these linebackers off the field, getting a safety in. So I'm going to just get a guy masquerading as inside linebacker as my next draft pick. I see Peter has 2 guys up here too.
Yeah, we know that's what you're all about, an interior linebacker. The more safety, the better. But yeah, another good pick. I like both the guys you picked. Another guy I'm going to throw out here. We're talking about Patrick Queen. How much longer is he with the organization? Even if he's not traded on draft day, how much longer is he here? It's likely that with what we gave Roquan, we're not going to be giving money to Queen. And there's a guy in here, this draft class, Drew Sanders from Arkansas, transfer from Alabama, who reminds me a lot of Queen, 6'5", 230, really came on this past season with 9.5 sacks and 3 forced fumbles. You look at his tape, a lot of things that we like about Queen, this guy does. You see him, he's got a quick step to the rush, is in the backfield plenty, can cover some. That's a part of this game you'd like to see more of, but the foundations are there. Has about a second-round grade. We'll see if he could fall to the 3rd if that's where they want to go. But, it would kind of, address 2 things at once, a potential replacement for Queen and also a guy who can rush on the edge if you need him to do that. So Sanders definitely a guy that I'm intrigued with, and it would be, I think, a good fit on this defense if they want to go that direction.
So, Alec, you want to address Jeremiah's comment here? Highly against the Queen trade. Will linebackers arguably more important than Mike in his opinion, and Roquan should have nothing to do with extending Queen. So Jeremiah is saying that Queen's play stands on its own, and we should not consider trading as well as Roquan and Queen played last year. We should not give them up for. I'm guessing, Jeremiah, if they knocked you over with a 1st-round pick, you'd probably take it, but we're not getting that. So Jeremiah is saying ride Queen out. Take the comp pick maybe, when it comes, but don't be in a hurry to trade Patrick Queen, Alec.
It really comes down to how you value those draft picks and what kind of draft pick you get in. I think if you get a 2nd-round pick, I'm really hard-pressed not to trade Queen at that point. I think I would do it. And that's just because you've reset the clock. Even you could basically almost get your pick of inside linebacker, in my opinion, with a 2nd-round pick and reset the clock. You maybe even could get Sanders. that Peter was just mentioning. Now, if it's a third round pick, I could definitely see waiting because you're looking at getting a third round pick or a fourth round pick as his comp pick. And that extra year of play next to Roquan, when you're trying to win a Super Bowl this year, maybe Lamar's playing on the tag and then who knows what happens next. And you got OBJ on a 1-year contract. You're all in on this season. I can totally get it and I can respect it. The only thing is, like I said on our last show, you got to look at it as the Ravens making an in-season trade to keep Queen. Like it's like the opposite of the in-season trades that we normally think of when we use a third round pick to get a good player. You got to think about it as the opposite with Queen. And I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just that's the way I'm looking at it. I don't know, Chris. Do you have any thoughts on that? And you want to talk about a player that you like, an inside linebacker?
I was gonna say I feel like you guys have talked about all the players. I mean, I'm a Jeremiah though. Like I'd rather keep Queen at this rate. Like I think the value formula I think makes sense. I would have a hard time knowing like the NFL right now, just seeing that many teams value him that highly in terms of giving up draft capital and then having to re-sign him.
Mm-hmm.
I just think it would make more sense for the Ravens to keep him for at least next year. I mean, then they have the 5th-year option still. Like he was playing pretty good even before Roquan, and I think it's going to be hard to find somebody. Particularly when we took forever to find Roquan to finally solidify the linebacker room. Like, don't be in a rush to ruin the room.
Fair enough.
I think that's a really good point that Chris brought up. Something I think we have to remember when we're talking about these draft day trades. All the players that have been traded, including Chuck Clark this year, Orlando Brown, Hayden Hurst, Hollywood Brown, they wanted out. We don't have any knowledge that Queen does, and I think that the Ravens have to be careful there from a locker room standpoint, like we're saying, from a standpoint of players wanting to come here, to keep the guys who want to play. Now, maybe Queen can see the writing on the wall. Maybe he knows some things that we don't know, that they're definitely out on, extending him, giving him a new contract. And maybe he wants a fresh start at that point. We don't know. I mean, there's nothing that's been in the news that has suggested any of that. But yeah, I think, who was it who said it in the comments?
Was it Mark? Mark saw a comment.
Yeah. I think this is spot on. All chips on the table, can't afford rookie mistakes. Like, we've seen a lot of progress from Queen. Sure, we can nitpick his game. There's some things that he still struggles at, but we've put the investment in this guy. Let's try and win a Super Bowl with the best possible defense we have, especially with not really knowing what's going on with quarterback, not knowing if the contract drama, even assuming we have Lamar, is that going to affect his season at all? It's a lot of unknowns there. I agree with that. Keep Queen. And let's have our defense be the best version of itself it can be, and take care of the future in the next offseason. That's my take on it.
I will say, Alec, before you lead us forward with our Red Star picks, I think, Peter, what you brought up is quite possible, though. I think Queen is heading into a time where he could earn a new contract. If he's playing next to Roquan, and Roquan's the mic, and he's eating up all these tackles, a team's going to have a question. Hey, Patrick Queen, why'd they replace you? Can you play Mike? Maybe Patrick Queen wants to go somewhere where he can play Mike and build his value up. So, like you said it in passing, but I think it really could be true, like what Hollywood wanted to do in Arizona, where Queen's like, hey, guys, you want to sign me, let me go, because DaCosta was pretty coy when they asked him about picking up the 5th-year extension, was like, oh, I got to talk to Patrick Queen, and my BS meter went whoop. I'm sure you've had conversations with people on your team, so I wouldn't count it out. But I don't think the Ravens, Alec, are just going to give Queen away for nothing. I mean, him and Roquan were magic last year together.
For sure. And I just don't see maybe the draft day partner coming with a 2nd-round pick. So I can completely get why people are not interested. I mean, remember, it took a second for us to get Roquan, right? So let's go to Chris next. I think when we talk about defensive tackles, I know that you had a couple players last week that you liked. Let's talk about your Red Stars, and then we'll go over to Jason.
Yeah, I mean, I said it last week, but yeah, Kalijah Kancey, I think, was probably the guy that probably stood out the most to me. If he fell to 22, I'd be all about it. Kind of what, Jason was bringing up earlier with Forbes of not typically a guy, or actually, I'm sorry, it was probably Tank Dell. It's Tank Dell you brought up. Not typically a guy the Ravens would go for in that position group of wide receiver. Same thing with defensive tackle. Kancey is 280 pounds, not your typical guy. Even I'd say Matabuke is kind of small, but he's not that small. but the guy is just a monster. His biggest comp is a guy who also played at Pitt, who also was very undersized, was Aaron Donald. Now, I'm not saying he's going to be Aaron Donald, but I mean, just looking at the tape, my gosh, he can do a lot of things like Aaron Donald did when he was also playing at Pitt. Just a pass rush machine, very physical, just always like knocking off guys and be able to get to the ball. He's a player that I would be really excited to kind of just like build around the defensive line, and he provides something a little bit different than what we have. A safer pick, which, I'll admit on our show, like I wasn't super high on, but I know he's kind of fairly high up on boards, I think, is Mozzie Smith out of Michigan. First off, it's Michigan, so I'm sure, the Ravens are going to be looking at him. He's a guy, I think I said on our show, a Michael Pierce type. Honestly, I think he's a good run stuffer. I think he can take up double teams. Some of the other guys, kind of looking at the defensive tackle group, some of the guys, like, they can make plays, they're bigger bodied, but they don't eat up as many double teams. And I do think that is a value, that you're looking for in defensive tackle, especially if you're going to be on the middle, not playing the end spots or, edge spots or anything. But Mozzie, he can take up double teams, and he's got a little bit of pass rush. He's not going to be the first guy there. He's not going to get a ton of sacks. But honestly, if you can provide consistent pressure up the middle, I think that's what you're looking for at that position group.
Love it, Chris. And now Kalijah Cansey is somebody that I dropped down my board because I don't see him as a fit for the Ravens. I think a 4-3 team will eat him right up because he's what you want for a 4-3 team. You tell him to take a gap, he is going to take it. I think the Aaron Donald comparisons are extremely unfair to him, but he's got that kind of lightning quickness where he can eat up a gap as fast as anybody in this draft. But when I was looking at it, when I did my star player, Jeremiah just mentioned him, but he didn't type his name in. So I'm a little disappointed in you out there, Jeremiah. His name is Adetomiwa Adebore. Now, there, I just messed it up. Adetomiwa Adebore. Now, Mr. Adebore out of Northwestern is somebody who has quickness as well. He can shoot a gap, but he's also got the skills, as Jeremiah is saying here. Northwestern guy with long arms is intriguing also. Man, he's just a monster. And he first came on the scene to me at the Senior Bowl. So when I saw him pushing people around and looking like a beast among his peers, like, who the heck is this guy? I looked on the Northwestern website. They had him listed at 260 pounds. So I'm like, well, yeah, he's pushing around guards. He looks real quick. No wonder he's an edge player. No wonder he's dominating these centers. So he shows up at the combine. He weighs 280 something and runs a 4.49. Now that's what Jordan Addison ran, a 4.49. Adebore did it at 280 pounds. He reminds me of Matabike, Peter, in his just like, he's an inch shorter than Matabike. He's about 10 pounds lighter than Matabike. So, like, density wise or whatever it's called, he adds up. Inch shorter, 10 pounds lighter. Same kind of just like cut body, same kind of explosion. Matabike, a guy, Peter, as you know, when he came out, well, he's more of a one gapper, a gap shooter. I don't know if he can, and we've seen his development here to where he's the ace on the run. Adebore is a guy that I see going in the third round, fourth round, an afterthought among, of course, Jalen Carter, Brian Brzee, Kalijah Cansey. I got him right there with Cansey. And it would not surprise me, Peter, if he went in the first round because he's got that kind of rare skills. They had him lined up on the edge at 280 pounds. He had a left tackle in the Big Ten with a spin move, hits the quarterback. I'm like, this guy is ridiculous. You're not supposed to do what he does at his weight. And if you can get him by and get that interior pressure, maybe he starts off as a sub rusher. Next year comes a more full-time role. Man, look out. I just love Adebore.
Peter, go ahead. What do you think?
All right. Yeah, I mean, Jason sold me on him right there. I'll admit, this is probably the position group that I just really haven't gotten that deep into yet. Just a lot of positions, man. And it's one I feel like the Ravens are pretty set at for now, but you can always use more linemen. We've talked about that. So I certainly could see them taking one with one of the later picks they have. I think another guy who might be there in the third to fourth round range who is also intriguing from an athletic standpoint, Kobe Turner, interior defensive lineman, played his first 3 seasons at Richmond and then transferred to Wake Forest for his senior year. And you watch this guy's tape. This guy just has a really high motor. You can see there's multiple instances on tape of him tackling running backs from behind as a defensive lineman, 293 pounds. A guy who doesn't have the best pass rush skills, only had 2 sacks as a senior there. But, you look at what he did at his pro day, and he didn't run at the combine, but he had a really strong pro day there. I think that he's a guy that if the Ravens took late, kind of fits that developmental mode, that they have with guys, looking back at like Broderick Washington or Arthur Jones, someone who give him a season or two in the organization could come up as a rotational guy, maybe a starter, a bridge guy before you get someone who's a real every down starter, or could be an every down starter. We've seen them transition guys from mid to lower draft picks and be a guy who's been there for a few seasons. So, I admit this is a position group that I have not researched as much as I would like, but he is someone that's standing out a little bit right now due to some of his measurables, due to some of his athleticism at the position, that I see some potential there that could be a good idea for the Ravens in the later rounds.
Well, Peter, I'll ping pong it back to you because I know that you like the safety group. And for me, the defensive line, I'm kind of with everyone we already talked about. I remember, hearing about Chris. I've been talking to Jason about these prospects, and, I didn't really have any new guys I wanted to add. So let's talk about safety and talk about your guys there.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, Jair Brown, I believe is how you say his name, out of Penn State. Again, safety is an interesting position right now for the Ravens. You got your starters set. We obviously drafted Hamilton last year, Marcus Williams. Now Chuck Clark is out, so we could see them, even though we got Geno Stone there. I think you need a little more depth. And Brown is a guy who does really pop out on the tape from a playmaking standpoint. There's some shades of Ed Reed here with this guy when he has the ball in his hands. Wouldn't be shocked at all if he's a guy who's watched a lot of Ed Reed tape. I mean, if you're a safety in the going into the modern NFL, you've watched a crap ton of Ed Reed tape, let's be honest. But yeah, I mean, he is a guy, big time player at Penn State. He's got more of a mid-round draft profile. And, honestly, with safety draft, there's not really that many guys here. And particularly later, the big one is the guy out of Alabama, Branch, who's a guy who can kind of line up all over the field. He might not be a pure safety at the next level. I'd imagine he's off the board by the time the Ravens pick at 22. And after just picking Hamilton, I understand that Hamilton wasn't really seen as a need pick last year either, but it feels unlikely that they do that 2 years in a row. But yeah, I think Brown has some intriguing athleticism, playmaking ability. Definitely a guy that I could see the Ravens being interested in. Is that need as high as some of the others we've talked about? Interior line depth, offensive line in the interior, wide receiver, cornerback? No. So I don't think it's likely that we go that route. I think some team will be intrigued enough by his playmaking ability before the Ravens draft him. But certainly someone who is intriguing. I'm interested to see what his career is like, no matter who picks him up.
No, Peter, I love Jair Brown a lot. I love your guy. What sticks out to me is his versatility. He can play high in the post. He's got interceptions from the post, like an Ed Reed or Marcus Williams, single high back there by himself. He's great blitzer, great against the run, just always seems to be around the ball. And always seems to be around the ball is a similar quality to the guy that I like. Same kind of principle here. And I wouldn't have thought that the Ravens would be in on a safety at all. But then there was the whole, we're interested in Adrian Amos, and I'm thinking, what the heck are we doing? So maybe we do pick one. The guy I like, his last name is also Brown. It's Sidney Brown out of Illinois. Similar to Jair Brown in the fact that both of them are always around the bleeping ball. And as you know, safeties are used in different ways. They can be covered to tight ends. They can be linebackers now. They can cover slot receivers. Sidney Brown is a guy that you want on your team, a captain, plays like his hair is on fire. The hustle. He's got when I started looking at his interceptions, I wanted to see how he got them. And I'm like, that was kind of lucky. That was kind of lucky. And then you start to realize after 10 of them that this guy is just hustling and busting his butt to the ball every way possible. You don't get those kind of interceptions unless you're running from the opposite hash to the sideline, like he is. Good hands, good eyes, like Jair Brown. Another guy I could see if he slips to like round 5 or something like that, he's going to be the best football player on the board if teams ignore the safety position. Another guy I want to mention, I'm going to cheat here real quick. Jamie Robinson. It's Jamie with 2 M's. If you want to look it up, it looks like Jamie. The reason I like him is because he is a slot cornerback to me. So if whoever drafts him, they're going to put up Jamie Robinson safety. What you're really getting is a guy who can play safety, sure, box safety, but he's really a slot cornerback. Reminds me a lot of Tavon, another high energy guy, another fearless guy. He's like 5'7", not bulky. And the way he's able to weave in and out of blocks and avoid blocks in the box and find the ball carrier is really impressive. But what sticks out with Jamie Robinson is his ability to cover small, quicker targets. So you're talking about going up against Deontay Johnson. You're talking about going up against Amari Cooper. You're talking about going up against Tyler Boyd. Jamie Robinson is every bit as quick to be able to keep up with those guys and keep Hamilton in his safety position. So I'm going to cheat and take 2 safeties. Like I feel like I got too many on my board, but all of them play different roles. They're not just like a free safety and strong safety anymore. They're linebackers. They're slot corners.
For sure. And I want to bring up the comment from Jeremiah, just kind of talking about how kind of fits with my belief is that I think this is a need for the Ravens. Safety is a need, mostly because until we figure out who our slot corner is, it could still be like behoove us to have Kyle Hamilton play that position, have Geno Stone be a safety back there, and then suddenly, we're really thin at safety. There's no one left. So I think the Ravens need to add a safety one way or the other, be it a late round guy or an undrafted free agent. Who that guy will be, I'm not 100% sure, but I do fully expect the Ravens to address his position one way or the other. Before we move on, I wanted to say, Chris, do you have any safeties you want to bring up?
No, not really. I was just going to say I feel like this position group as a whole is just a little bit weaker than maybe it was last year. But I love hearing, Jason and Peters and everyone's kind of opinions on some of the guys like later in this draft class. I feel like that's going to be where you're going to find some of these gems, is looking at a lot of the tape of some of these guys who are like, you're not going to be at the top of the board. So I'm looking forward to it. Whoever the Ravens end up taking, or, whether they don't, I'm looking forward to it because I feel like there's got to be like 1 or 2 of these guys that are going to be good long term, but it's just from a class that is just as a whole, I think, is just kind of weak.
Yeah, to piggyback on what Chris just said, you can wait probably undrafted, and one of these dudes is going to slip through. Like Jason, you want to feel old, man. We got Marvin Harrison Jr. coming out next year. Yeah. We got Joey Porter Jr. How about Jason Taylor Jr.?
Oh, wow.
In this draft.
Wow.
And he's a pretty darn good free safety with not great athletic skills. So kind of like the opposite of his dad, who is an athletic freak. But you want to talk about a guy who can, first note, he can walk and chew gum. Like he's got like 3, 4, 5 eyes, where one's on the quarterback, one's on this receiver, one's on this receiver, and he just processes everything. So like to Chris's point, maybe it's an undrafted guy that comes in to make his team. It wouldn't be uncommon for Ravens to get a guy late, like Geno Stone in the 6th, or Chuck Clark in the 6th or 7th, whatever Geno was, and make him and have him stick.
Yeah, such a cool conversation about the safety class. I think, like what you said, Jason, all these players being a little bit different now. It's all about finding the right fit for your scheme and the right guy that you can put in the right position to play well. Now, there's no contest. Maybe corners deeper, but the edge position is super deep in this class. You can't even begin to say it's not a strong class. So we'll start off with Jason and then kind of go around the horn. Who you got, man?
It's more like who I don't have in this group. I think you set it up nice. Like, I just want to go over the first round real quick because there are 5 guys that I think could be in consideration, much like we talked about with the corners. You got Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson at the top. They'll probably be going in the top 10. Then you got a guy like Lucas Van Ness, who's a big edge. He can even slide inside. Just an impressive player. Most people have him going in the first 15 picks. Then you got the freak, Nolan Smith. And then you got a guy, Miles Murphy, who was originally like a top 10 pick, but all these other guys started to like scoot up the board. There's also Keon White, Will McDonald, Felix Ndike Uzoma, BJ Ojolari doesn't get mentioned until number 11 on my board, which is criminal because he screams Ravens will defender, or excuse me, Sam linebacker. So it's more like I feel like I have my edge players ranked properly throughout the board. So I don't have a favorite. I just wanted to simply say I love this group, and maybe the Ravens do want an edge to back up Tyus Bowser. So they love using. They'll find a way to use all 4 linebackers if they end up with a good edge in this class.
Yeah, I think you put it best. Like it's easier to list who we don't like. There's any one of those guys that you mentioned. Like we'd love it if the Ravens got them. This is a stud class. There's so many guys, and you can't pick just one. And it's deep. There's a lot of guys that we can talk about beyond that too. Now maybe there's questions about the all-around nature of their game. Maybe there's questions about do they need to put on some more weight to their frame to be someone who's going to consistently win at the next level. But if the Ravens miss out on edge rusher in the first round because they go cornerback or wide receiver, there's still some guys I think that you look at. One of the guys that's really stood out to me looking at his tape, really fast pass rusher, Yaya Diaby, I believe is how you say his name, from Louisville. Now, maybe not the best run defender, but this guy is explosive when he goes to the quarterback. He's a guy who has improved every year that he was in college. You love to see that. Again, might need to get a little bigger at the next level, but there's a lot there. And another explosive guy, I'm going to throw 2 out here. Let me make sure I get this guy's name right. I believe it's Byron Jones from Tennessee. Another guy
Byron Young.
Byron Young, sorry. Sometimes you get mixed up with the guys who have, more normal names than more common, I should say. But another guy, very quick first step, another guy who might need to add some more weight, but you see his tape and there's a lot to like there, can go off the edge, and not too bad in coverage either from what I saw. But yeah, I mean, there's other guys too. We could talk a lot. Those are just 2 guys that I just really like their explosiveness when I watch the tape. Again, I'd love to see the Ravens get more of a guy who's can check all the boxes, considering we're still waiting out to see, is Owe really that guy. But there's a lot here. I would be surprised if the Ravens exit this draft without an edge rusher, just because every round you go, there's someone that you could take. It's like at any point in the draft, there'll be someone there that's worth drafting.
This draft's all about edge for the Ravens, I feel like, in a way, because we are always about best player available, and the edge will absolutely present itself 1, 2, maybe 3 times in the draft as BPA, and it's just a matter of when the Ravens are going to pull the trigger on that player. I agree, though. I really like the idea of a Sam linebacker coming in. Ojulari stands out to me, so I'll put my stamp on him as a guy I would love to see in a Ravens uniform.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I originally had Adebore at edge just because some of the film that I kind of seen on him, it just kind of seemed more of a natural fit for that position group, which is funny because I was all about Cansey for defensive linemen, but I think Jay, I think you're right. Of like, I think they're pretty much just similar players. So he's not really an edge guy, he's a defensive lineman. But other than that, yeah, I feel like Nolan Smith and I feel like and DK Uzama, I think are probably 2 of the guys that I'm kind of liking. That the Ravens can maybe target a little bit later. But yeah, I think between corner and edge, I guess I'm wondering like which one is going to be making a run first. Is it going to be one of those 2 position groups? Is it going to be maybe it's receiver? I don't know, but one of these groups, I think in the first round, there's going to be a run on a lot of them, and it's going to determine where the Ravens are going to end up drafting.
So if I could, I'm going to ask a 1-word answer from everybody. Maybe we'll start with Peter and go around. But you want a sub rusher, you want a backup Sam for Bowser, or it doesn't matter? To me, doesn't matter. Peter?
I go, it doesn't matter. I liked what we saw with McDonald in his first year of just how many different positions he wanted to put players in. I think that just get a talented guy and the Ravens will figure out the best way to use him.
Doesn't matter, but Sam. Because
I can understand that too.
like it doesn't actually matter, but I feel like that's not like that. I would prefer the question before the doesn't matter wasn't an option. So I'm going to say Sam.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be contrarian. I'll say this. I'll say Rush, and that's just because we've got Bowser, we've got Owe played a little bit of Sam last year. Whether he's the best fit for Sam, another story. But I think I think if you get somebody else at the Rush spot, I think that helps too. So
We like it.
Yeah. Well, we talked about all the defensive positions kind of back to back to wrap that up. So now we're going to wrap up the show with the offensive positions. All these positions are really interesting for the Ravens because the ones we haven't talked about yet are quarterback, which we all know that situation going in, running back, which is a fascinating problem for the future of the Ravens. Very unclear who's going to be the running back in 2024. Is 2023 the year that you take a player to start developing him for that role? And then tight end. We took 2 tight ends last year. The room is very full. Even with losing Oliver, you could argue that the Ravens don't need another tight end. But we'll start off with quarterback. I mean, I've said enough about AR-15 that it's no secret he's my red star here. So I'll throw out Stetson Bennett. I saw someone saying that he might be falling off people's boards now. And I don't know what's going on there. I know Peter doesn't like him. So let me just ping it over to Jason. What are you thinking? I know you're not big into the quarterback evaluation, so if you don't want to put your name on it,
I have nothing to say. Give me Lamar Jackson. You want to draft one of these guys in the mid rounds to replace Tyler Huntley? That's fine. I'll look him up and study him afterwards. But no thoughts. I don't even want to waste any time on the quarterback, so I'll just pass it along.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just kind of what the answer is, because it's like, if it's not Lamar, then I don't know what we would have to say there, because then it just comes down to, okay, well, what did you get in the trade package for him? Where does that put you in the draft? And then, it seems like the top 4 quarterbacks are going to be gone after pick 6 in this draft. So it's like the only way you're going to get a shot at Richardson is if the Lions trade for Lamar. So then after those guys, like, there's not really anyone who really stands out. We've talked about Hooker in the podcast. We talked about McKee. We talked about Bennett. There's lots of drawbacks to those guys, as we pointed out. So, yeah, I think I agree with Jason there. It's like, we know that Lamar is obviously the best possible option, and if not, then we got a lot of questions as to what the Ravens' next move would be.
Yeah, after the OBJ signing, I feel like if the Ravens went out and got a quarterback round 1, like, that's just like ruined any sort of negotiation. I guess that already happened. Good faith that already happened from that. So I don't think it's a good idea. But yeah, in general, I watched a good bit of film on this class. I feel like outside the top 4, I don't want anybody. I don't think any of these guys are honestly any better than what we have in Tyler Huntley. So, which kind of sucks to say, because I would like an upgrade, but I don't think this class is it.
All right. Well, I'm going to deviate a little bit from our sheet. Let's talk about tight end and end on a high note with running backs. I think that's going to be a spirited conversation. And I'll just say one last time, I love Mr. Barker. Give me some Barker. Is a late round guy or undrafted maybe. I wouldn't want to skip over any of the other positions in need. But if the Ravens can find their way to getting Barker on the squad, I'll be smiling. Just like I was smiling with Blakely last year. Here it is.
Is that your guy too, Jason?
No, it is not.
Okay.
No, it's another Huddled Up Films.
Barker, sorry about that. Barker did not make my board. By the way, if we had some kind of need, I would have more tight ends listed on my board. I only have 9. I would think my favorite, if we were to add a tight end, I would think it would have to be somebody who could block, because we have likely Kolar, Mark Andrews, obviously. So I don't think we want another pass catcher only to take up targets. Now, I actually like Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan, so maybe it does happen. Maybe he gets the Ben Mason treatment. But I loved his blocking. If he lasts to like round 5 or something, maybe the Ravens take him. But I don't see the Ravens using a pick on the tight end at all in this draft. I think you can get a blocking tight end. You can get an Eric Tomlinson type off the street to provide you depth. You got Pat Ricard on the roster, who is blocked in line plenty in his career. So I'll throw Luke Schoonmaker out. He's my positional favorite, but I don't think the Ravens draft one.
I'll throw in actually Shoemaker and Darnell Washington. How about that? I'd also love a Darnell Washington. The guy's a total package. And when I did the show with Ken, he was like, I could see him being a tackle, which kind of threw me for a loop, but I can see it too, because one of the scouting prospects was saying that he's basically a guard. Like when he's out there, he blocks as well as any guard. And you could see it too when he was at the combine. He just moved those sleds as if they were nothing. And he had really impressive hands. So I could definitely see this guy being a huge weapon in the NFL, but he's going to cost you. He's going to be some draft capital. Peter, who are you going to say?
Go for tight end?
Oh, I thought that you were going to jump in.
No, I wasn't going to jump in. Actually, no. I will admit this is a position group that I have not looked at anyone for yet, because I think it is the least likely positional group that the Ravens will be drafting for. Not only did you draft two, tight ends last year, obviously you got Andrews still there. He's under contract. I do see the argument. Okay, Kolar and Likely, they're much more receiving tight ends. And Andrews can block, but obviously use him a ton as a receiver. But, like Jason said, we got Pat Ricard, or you could get a free agent guy pretty easily. And you never say never with the Ravens. They always do something every year that surprises us. But tight end to me, just it felt like a waste of time for me to scout them for possible fits for the Ravens, because we got them. That's the most shored up position on the entire roster outside of kicker, I guess.
What do you think, Chris? Did you have anybody you want to mention?
Nah, let's move to running backs.
Let's do it then. Who you got for running back?
Go ahead, Chris. Why don't you guys go first? Because I got a bunch I can make a case for.
Man, you're putting me on the spot for another position group that I personally did not review a ton of. I'll say this. I'll say this group was definitely interesting because I thought the Ravens didn't necessarily have a need here, especially with giving Justice Hill another 1-year deal. But I will say, it's like that's all in for this year. But next year is when things gets interesting. So in terms of, are the Ravens going to pick up a running back who needs to start right away? I don't think they need to. I think you definitely should consider a guy to develop behind, maybe redshirt for a year, because next year we're going to have some running back issues. So I'm really excited to kind of hear who you guys think. Honestly, I could see a little bit of anything. If you want to have a Gus Edwards kind of power back, I'd be interested. If you want to have more of a shifty back, I'll adjust Justice Hill. Like, I'm interested in that too. So yeah, who wants to go next?
This is how I'll tee it up. So similar to what we just said about edge, this class is really deep for running back. And it makes me really curious why we signed Justice Hill. And part of me thinks the Ravens aren't afraid of carrying 4 running backs this year, because you know how they love their special teams. Justice Hill got the little SP or ST next to his name on the depth chart. Him and Delshon Phillips and Welsh, sucking up roster spots. So why not have a 4th running back? And to me, if I'm going to pick these guys, the 2 guys that really stick out to me are Spears and Evans. And there's other running backs I like too, because like I said, it's a really good class. A-Chain is a wild prospect. But for me, I just love how slippery and shifty Spears is, how high effort he is through contact. And I could see how his receiving would be a projection, but how it could also be there. And then with Zach Evans, he's super interesting to me because I wonder if he's going to slide. There's these like character concern issues with him, which I think are baloney. And he's been going like shuffling between universities and programs, but he has good patience, maximizes his blocks. And if his medicals come out all right, because there are some injury concerns, and he can clean up his ball security, I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the better running backs in this draft. So, Peter, who you got?
Spears was my guy. I really love Spears. I love his vision. I love his playmaking ability. But, there's so many guys that we could say here. So I'll throw out another guy. I think this guy will get drafted higher than the Ravens would have any, want to draft a running back given the current state. But and again, there's lots of guys I could pick too. I really like this running back draft. I think a lot of teams are going to get guys that they're going to be really happy with. But out of UCLA, Michigan transfer Zach Charbonnet, maybe that's how you say his name. Senior last year, almost 1,400 yards, 7 yards per carry, 14 touchdowns. Just touchdown monster throughout his career. Has really good receiving skills. He just looks like an NFL back on tape, in my opinion. Not the biggest guy, but he also has some good moves after the tackle. Explosive. There's a lot I could say about him. He's going to make some team very happy. I doubt it's the Ravens, but if the Ravens are looking at, not saying I agree with this move, but are they looking at not signing JK or Gus? I think he's a guy that could come in here and make some noise. I like what I see from him from the receiving game. We know that that's something that we're waiting for the Ravens with these backs. But yeah, I mean, Spears, I like Spears more than I like Charbonnet. But he's another guy that I find really intriguing in this draft.
I love Tajay Spears. My spiel on him, you mentioned the vision. It's not just and the patience. It's not just vision as far as, okay, I know what hole I'm going through. It's the timing of him allowing his blockers to get there, seeing how his blockers are attacking the defense to be able to make the next move, have the next move in mind. And then he's got a little bit of of elusiveness to him, Tajay Spears does. Not in like the shake and I'll spin you and break off 3 different people on the way to the end zone, but he sees you coming, much like Lamar's gifted at. He sees you coming before you see him half the time, and is able to leverage you one way and put his foot in the ground and take off the other way. So I love Tajay Spears. The guy I think that people are sleeping on is Chase Brown from Illinois, another Illinois guy. In fact, he's Sidney Brown's twin brother. But 2 of my Red Stars are twin brothers, which is I realized that, so that gets me excited. I think I went from 6 o'clock to 7:30 just thinking of that. But yeah, Chase Brown. My initial notes on him: a lot to like. Pass catching back, power, speed is probably passable, but I'm afraid he might be a 4A player. So I loved everything about this player, but my concern was I don't think he's fast or physical enough. I think he's just kind of a guy who's great at football. And then he comes to the combine and runs a 4.43. So I know it's a track event. I know there's a difference between play speed and combine speed. And I trust my eyes on tape. I do. I don't think he's 4.43 fast. But when I watched him, I was wondering if he was too slow for the game. And maybe that's just him pacing his runs and changing speeds and setting people up. Because like I said, heck of a football player. He can do it all. His pass blocking was good. I like his ability to catch out the backfield. I saw him run between the tackles, saw him run off tackles. Like I liked everything about Chase Brown from Illinois, except I was just wondering if he wasn't a good enough athlete to be in the NFL. And if you run 4.43, I don't care if your play speed's a little slower, you're a good enough athlete to be in the NFL. So day 3 guy for Chase Brown, I could see it, man. I could see it. And with all these running backs being so good, somebody's going to, again, like we were talking about corners, somebody's going to slip to the 5th, 6th round, and he might be your fantasy, lead running back from the rookies next year because he lands with a great team and a great opportunity. So I would say, like, for your fantasy players out there, just pay attention to opportunity. If they draft somebody in the first 5, 6 rounds, that guy, yes, he can be a starter too.
I like this Chase Brown pick a lot. I'm reading one of his scouting reports, and just the patience, kind of a good all-around back. And like you said, if he has that measurable, one of his comps is Khalil Herbert. I like that guy a lot. So, that's awesome. Peter, what do you want to say?
Oh, just that Chase Brown, another guy that also stood out on tape to me. So and really like what Jason said there. I agree with what he said there. Another really intriguing guy. Like you said, there's a lot here. It's not a bad year to have a running back need.
For sure. And this is where the trade back, I think it gets interesting. If the Ravens get shifty at 22 and they're like, all right, we're going to go to 25, kind of similar to what they did with Linderbaum, right? I think they got 22 or 23. It was 23 maybe in the trade with with Arizona, and then they went to 25 and they got another 4th round pick. This is exactly the kind of exchange that the Ravens get that 4th round pick. Maybe they trade that one, they get 2 5s and 5 and the 4th next year or something, whatever. Who knows? If they can keep getting that marginal value and then they go ahead and draft a running back, I'm not going to hate it. And I just hope they find a way to get him on the roster, protect him, and not have another Beatty situation. That's all I ask. If you're going to do it, you got to make sure you're serious about him, and that's the only knock I would have about drafting a running back in this current situation is we saw what happened with Beatty.
Yeah.
But
it's no longer irresponsible for the Ravens to draft a running back.
It's not totally irresponsible. It's just like
I think give you guys some crap because that's what you said to me. I think
it's irresponsible if they don't get more picks. So that's what I was saying. Like they need to find more picks if they're going to do that. What are you going to say, Jason, before we wrap it up?
No, I was just going to wrap it up on. I echo your sentiment on Justice Hill, and I realized that both J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards are free agents after this season. So this time next year, you could be looking at just Justice Hill on your roster. But, I mean, the flip side of that is you can draft a rookie or 2 rookies, or maybe you get a steady vet and spend a draft choice on a rookie and have him take up a lot of slack. It's an easily translatable position. We've seen it. It's not like a new trend for decades. Your Arian Foster way back, I think, that's 15 years ago now, all of a sudden came right in and led the league in rushing. So, I don't think the Ravens are in a bad situation for the future if they don't get a running back. They could run with J.K., Gus, and Justice this year and see how it goes. Maybe get an undrafted guy, see if you can get him to stick around. But if they use, like you said, Alec, if they get an extra pick or 2, which I'm not a big fan of hoarding picks for guys that you're not using, but if they did get an extra pick and, Chase Brown or, like you said, Zach Evans is there in the 6th round, shoot, tell them, hey, look, next year we got no running back signed. So be patient this year, learn the system, get in the weight room. This is going to be your backfield to share next year.
For sure. Well, Jason, thanks so much for having us on your channel. We really appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. So I guess instead of saying where you can find the channel, you're already here watching it with Jason. But if you're not here and you're listening to it maybe on our show, what are you doing? We've had Jason on a million times. Go follow him on YouTube, HuddleItUpFilms. He's the real deal. And he'll be doing a draft show with Ken McCusick. It should be streaming on his channel. And there's no better place to watch a draft, in my opinion, than these guys. Watching every single pick come through, looking at the big board, looking at trades. A lot of fun. I hope I'm able to be a part of it this year. And and if you're seeing us from Jason's channel, hey, what's up? You can follow us on YouTube as well, One Winning Pod, and we also have a podcast, onewinningpod.com, and you can follow us there too, and your podcast players. So we really had a lot of fun doing this show. Say goodbye to the people, everybody.
Night, everybody. Football's family.
Yeah.
Bye.